this is the interview with Mpho Maseko, the Chief Marketing Officer at Wunderman, South Africa. Welcome, Mpho. And let us start by looking a little bit beyond your career. Where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where's your hometown?
Hello, Dr. Nick. I was born and raised in a small township on the east of Johannesburg called Tsakani. I grew up there most of my life. I'm a Joburg girl and a Gauteng girl.
Okay. And where did you go to school? And then after school, where did you go on from there?
Primary school, my formative years, I went to school in Boksburg, at St. Dominic's Boksburg. That's where I matriculated. I then studied at Wits University. I did a BA degree in international relations, and then moved on to do Post Graduate Diploma in management at Wits Business School. So, born in Gauteng, went to school in Gauteng.
Now, what were your dreams when you went to school? What were you dreaming of? What kind of career were you dreaming about?
You know, at school, I actually was dreaming about a career in design, funny enough. I remember one of my teachers, and she was an Afrikaans teacher, asking us, what do we want to do? And I was like, I'd love to be in the product design space, which was very interesting. A lot of the times during the school holidays, I used to work in my parents' general dealership. So subconsciously, I know why I'm where I am now, because I worked a lot with brands and could identify different brands, quality brands and cheaper brands that were accessible maybe to, mass markets. At a very early age, I was working with customers and working on brands, helping to sell product through our family dealership. So I'm not surprised that I'm in marketing.
Now, was there anything that inspired you particularly to go into design? Was there maybe a movie? Was there a product? Was there an actor, an actress, something that inspired you about design?
Come to think about it, I think a lot of what we saw on TV related to design and the things that we didn't have access to on a daily basis in the township. If you watched Dallas, you'd see the beautiful houses, beautiful cars, the fashion, you'd see, paintings on walls. And I think when it comes to movies, the one movie that does stand out, I unfortunately can't remember the name, but I know Demi Moore was in it. And one of the lead characters there was an architect. And, just seeing those houses and design work. But I'm also Ndebele. So from home, given Ndebele craft and arts and, design is a key principle of the work that Ndebele women do. So helping my not necessarily my grandparent, but my dad's aunts in looking at beads and being able to actually sort the beads by color and texture and size was an integral part of my life. So I think that's where the love came in.
Oh, that's very interesting. Obviously, you have one of the most famous design icons, Esther Mahlangu.
Definitely.
And when I think about the Ndebele brand, it's all about design, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, her brand is all about design, and she's been able to take Ndebele art, not only, keep it in locally, but she's been able to take South Africa through her art and through her design work all over the world.
So design comes naturally to you.
Yeah.
Then where did you start your career?
I started my career at an advertising agency. First, I was an intern while studying, just about to finish my degree. I got an internship at a PR agency and worked on the Transnet account. And in fact, SAA was still a part of Transnet at the time. And we were launching Boeings and doing lots of events through David Barrett and Company. After studying, I then went to actually go do a short course, which it wasn't short, it was a year, through Boston Media House to actually look into my PR skills, writing skills. So I did a media relations course and eventually got a job at an advertising agency in the client service division. Worked on state-owned brands. I think my experience from my PR experience made me a suitable candidate for the job, because then I worked on Shosholoza Mail, which is a train brand for the mass market. I worked on Revlon, which was nice, feminine products. And I then moved on to, from the client service division, I then moved on to strategy. So worked in the strategy division at this agency and moved on to the client side after agency.
And that is where you joined the SABC,
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
So what were your responsibilities at the SABC?
My career at the SABC was actually quite long. It spanned almost 10 years. I started out as brand manager at SABC One, at the right age, a nice, inspiring, classic South African youthful brand, and helped reposition SABC One at the time, moving post-democratic South Africa. I think the brand was very inclusive, trying to be everything to everyone. And we helped in the repositioning and making sure that it entrenches itself in Mzansi culture, or what the payoff line at the time that we launched was Mzansi for sure. And
so that's a payoff line that you came up, that
yes,
you invented?
That me and the team.
Mzansi for sure.
Mzansi for sure. And it's the
Nice.
payoff line that still exists now. One of my proudest pieces of work that we've done at SABC. And I moved on to radio from television. A very unpopular move, because often it's not perceived that people move from TV marketing to radio marketing. But I then worked at SAFM, which is a national platform for conversation with a national footprint. However, wasn't getting the audiences, the numbers that we believed it deserved, neither, and in return was not getting the revenue. So I was a part of the team that actually helped build the SAFM brand, and the numbers showed. We increased, when I was there, part of the team, station management, we increased the audience base, I think, by 40%, and revenue by about a 25% margin, which is great.
Now, before we go further,
Yeah.
Mzansi for sure is obviously such a big success story. Can you share a little bit? Can you tell us, how did you grow this brand? Where did you grow it from? How did you go about it? And what were the key learnings from your Mzansi for sure strategy and campaign?
I mean, the key learnings from the campaign is you have to actually listen. South African youth don't have too many platforms. At the time, did not have too many platforms to actually express themselves through or actually engage with. And we know that a majority of South African youth is unemployed youth. Some, even though they're studying, but they just don't have that connection to a local flavor. So we knew that it was very important to actually listen to what the youth were looking for. We looked at the scale of the content that was being viewed. And funny enough, the content also being viewed on this youth platform was also quite mature content. So people were looking for education, not only entertainment, on that platform. And it was easy to focus just only on the entertainment value of a broadcaster. So doing research and finding out what audiences are looking for, what are they viewing, what are they watching, and why are they watching what they're watching, was very key. And also, being able to play with what we loved was, because you're repositioning a brand, we wanted to play with the zeitgeist. What's happening in the times. And South African youth we moved away from a positioning of Yamampela, which was saying that it's real. People knew that it was already real. What else? What was beyond real? So what do we offer? And we offered a promise of, we know you're authentic. So speaking to the authenticity of being a South African youth, and being a part of South Africa meant, you're part of, in the youth culture was Mzansi, they really describe South Africa as Mzansi. And that Mzansi came out all the time that this is how we do things in Mzansi. So having a national identity for the youth, having them drive a South African youth identity and not take from America and not take from any other place, but own a South African youth identity. That was one thing that came out that we felt needed to live within the brand.
Now, I can imagine 2010, the World Cup must have been a big highlight in your Mzansi career. Can you tell us a little bit about what did you do in the run-up to 2010 and during 2010, and how did you keep up with all the hype and the excitement around 2010?
It was exciting times at that time, and in fact, SABC, I was very privileged to be at the SABC at the time because the SABC corporate marketing team had run one of the most successful campaigns, which was Feel It, It Is Here. And, you know, we moved away from a place of nation. Yes, there was a nation pride, but it was also about expressing the emotion that we were feeling, you know, the emotion that we were going through. And we were all elated at the time. I happened to work in the radio marketing division with all 18 radio stations for the SABC. So I was leading the team in terms of marketing at the time. And as you can imagine, I mean, the SABC's radio stations reach about 36 million audiences a day. Well, at the time they reached that. So to be a part of celebrating the biggest event that was happening on the continent and in the world, and having access to those platforms to actually express South Africans' feelings and being able to express the brand, you know, the stature of the nation brand, which is South Africa going through the most amazing time of their lives, was very exciting. But we also relied a lot on partnerships. And as you may know, having been involved in World Cups yourself, there's serious restrictions from FIFA when it comes to how we craft messaging, how we develop promotions. Our partners always come first. And so working closely with the Coca-Colas, which were partners, was amazing. Generating, you know, because it's a business, as you're doing this, yes, it's fun, but you need to understand that you need to generate as maximum revenue as possible, and you need to ensure that you have all the engagement. And for some people, they can turn around and say, well, it was very easy. You guys were a national broadcaster with the rights. But no, the rights were not only ours. We had competitor broadcasters who actually also had rights and access to some of the content. So it was a battle for the best expression of this amazing 2010 World Cup.
So where did you go to from the SABC? What was the next step in your career?
The next step in my career, I was at Sandton. I moved on to Sandton, which is a technology company that focuses on broadcast technology, so broadcast transmission services. And Sandton is a key partner of the SABCs. So it was a natural progression. And the reason I moved from SABC to Sandton was in support of the South Africa's digital migration program. With the masses of audiences that the SABC has, unfortunately, a lot of them, especially in the rural areas, still only access their television and radio broadcast services through analog transmission, which is quite archaic given the circumstances, you know, given the world, this digital world that we live in now. So I then moved on to Sandton to assist them position themselves as a technology provider for digital television migration, which eventually will roll out into radio or digital radio transmission. A lot of countries, especially in Europe and Scandinavia, are already there. And our challenge in South Africa, and this is a challenge that I faced once I had the, you know, deeper insight into the business, beyond just helping them market, beyond just positioning Sandton, there's a lot of policy and regulatory issues that we haven't resolved in this broadcast space. And that, you know, made my plight a little, or my ambitions in marketing digital migration in South Africa and for Sentech, I would say a failure in the sense that my plans and my ambitions were really not achieved. What I do appreciate, though, was being a part of the Department of Communications Digital Migration steer corps that advised the minister. So having my marketing and communications input in advising the Minister of Communications as to how this should roll out when we eventually do deal with policy issues, when we do eventually deal with regulatory issues, and all the parties that are involved are aligned. This is how this migration should happen at a national scale. So my thoughts and my input really have been more from an advisory perspective, and unfortunately not from an implementation perspective, which I think, South African audiences deserve.
Now, this is very interesting because obviously every career goes through ups and downs. Now, from the highs of Mzansi for sure, the World Cup 2010, how did you handle the lows, and what would you suggest or advise aspiring professionals, especially in marketing and branding? How should they handle those lower turns, those lower points in their career? How should they react?
One thing about what you need to always do when you're working is know what your values are and know what your convictions are. What are your principles and what are the things that drive you? And you work in an environment where you're going to meet all sorts of people and there's all sorts of business agendas. In a multi company, in a company that has multiple partners, or in working on a project that has multiple partners is even harder because all the parties, almost, especially from a governance perspective and in a state-owned entity, all the parties need to be aligned for work to happen. And you really need to be resilient. And as long as the work that you're doing does not betray your values, your brand values and your principles, then patience, being patient, being able to see the bigger picture and buy into the bigger picture is important. So always know why you're in a space, why you're working for a particular brand. And if you feel that that role does not allow you to achieve your ambitions, your career ambitions, then you can move on amicably so as well. But don't create any crisis or animosity. We are all in charge of our careers. We're all in charge of our destinies. And challenges do come your way. And in life, I've also come to realize now that I'm older that the challenges that I experience in my career and in my personal life are only there to make me the best version of my brand, the best version of myself.
Now, you mentioned remembering your values, your principles, and what is driving you. So what would you say is driving Mpho?
What's driving me right now is being able to, all I want to do and all I am striving to do is actually being able to impart my skills. I've learned a lot along the way. I've made very good contacts, but I'm now driven by a strong sense of wanting to impart my skills and impart my knowledge with those who come after me. It's funny, in South Africa, we still talk about the conversations that we have. And in the position that I sit, I have young people come to me and say, "Oh, we are so proud of you that you're sitting in this position, and you give me so much hope because I think when I see you, I think I can do it." And it's surprising for me because I think as you work and you move away from being a student and struggling, you forget that there are so many people who are still looking up to you and looking for guidance. And a lot of them actually do not have the confidence to approach me and say what they say, or they don't even have access to me. So I'm being driven now by making sure that marketing and communications first has its rightful place in business, and is recognized as a value driver from not just a cost center, but really as a means for businesses to thrive. And as I do that, I need to inspire those who are younger or those who are coming into this field to feel that they have the support and I am accessible for them to learn from.
So really it's about legacy for you. It's about mentoring and being a role model.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, from Centec, you stepped up to join one of the world's largest advertising agencies, Wunderman.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Wunderman and your role at this global agency?
Yes. Wunderman is a digital marketing agency. We are a creatively driven and data-inspired agency that focuses on building brands in a digital world. We understand the role that data plays in data insights play in building authenticity for brands. We do the work that we offer is really we do social media management. We create brand experiences that are supported a lot by online data. We develop marketing technologies and manage marketing technologies for a lot of our clients. It's a space, I find myself in this space because I couldn't do it in the broadcasting perspective. We now know that online, social, digital content is being developed in billions by the second now. So broadcasters really are being threatened by access to information and access to content on digital platforms. And I find myself in a beautiful space at Wunderman because we are now it's a new state of marketing. It's a new state of brand building because I think a while back we thought, digital platforms are tools to help us get work to be more efficient and get work more done, but done more quickly. But now we realize that, in fact, digital platforms are here to stay. In fact, this is where a lot of brands can express themselves quicker, faster, and become more agile. So that's what we do. We help brands become more agile on digital platforms.
Agile, agility, clearly a key word in this new digital economy. Now let's talk about personal branding. Can you tell us what have you learned from your journey, from your extensive career, that is really important for building a strong personal brand? That a youngster, an aspiring professional today really needs to consider when they're building their career and when they're thinking about their personal brand?
Personal branding, I think, what people need to be conscious of is it's about being conscious of everything that you do. For me, building a personal brand is about how you feel inside and how you express that outside. So it's about mental strength, being focused. It's about staying focused and having sight of what you want to achieve in the long term. And it's also about, psychologically, I think it's just about being well psychologically. There's a lot of influences, there's a lot of pressures in the working and professional environment and in our personal lives. We live in a very fast-paced world, but ensuring that you have well-being internally from a psychological and a mental strength perspective, and then that's almost how I see it is that becomes your brand architecture. What happens internally? It's you being able to define your values, define the things that you want to achieve, having a vision, and then being able to express that architecture, your brand architecture, externally. So, delivering consistently, being authentic, being true to yourself, not betraying your core, basically, is part of. So it's a consciousness building your personal brand.
Now, as more and more women are entering leadership, what would you recommend women to consider when they're building their personal brand? Because obviously very much like you, believe you're a mother of two. You need to balance your personal life with your professional life. So what is it that you really would recommend women in leadership to look after as they're building their brands?
We were having this discussion with a group of friends of mine that were actually saying, it shouldn't be any different for men and women in building our personal brands. It shouldn't only be women's responsibility in ensuring that we have work-life balance. Having, like I mentioned to you earlier, I live where I live to have the support structure because I know I'm a busy professional. So being able to make clear and decisive decisions about what it is that you want to achieve in your career and giving yourself the proper support structure in helping you achieve your career ambitions is important, because I think what happens is, and if you don't have that architecture set and you don't know your center, then it's going to be difficult. You're going to feel like you're juggling a lot of balls. But we do, as women, need to support one another. I understand when I work with my team members and they do have responsibilities where they have to pick up children, go and cook, and, they have those responsibilities. It's also about being able to support other women who actually don't have the privilege to delegate or be able to pass on responsibility to someone else. So being supportive of that is important.
Now, you mentioned your support structure. Can you tell us a little bit, how are you structuring? How have you structured? What is it that makes up your support structure?
My support structure starts from my partner. He's very actively involved in supporting me in my career ambitions and dreams, and it often becomes my that wall that I bounce off ideas off of, and he gives me good critiques, so I love that. And I also rely a lot on my mom. I'm lucky enough to have a parent who's still alive and who is there to help me with my children. So when we do travel, I'm traveling for work or we're not around, she will check in on the children. We have a live-in helper. We have, we hire people to help get the children around during working hours. So we have those resources that you use at your disposal, and make sure that, the children also understand, it becomes very difficult to say, I actually can't be at your play at 12 o'clock because mom will be working. But when children understand the big picture and that, you do work, this is what affords us our lifestyle, when they understand it. And I think I think it's a responsibility for myself to also impart the value that my children must have the mission to be whatever they want to be, and they must know that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. And I have girl children, so it's very important for me to create that balance and allow them the possibility to also dream bigger than I dream for myself.
Now, we're living in a digital world, and you're obviously working for a digital agency. So what are your ideas, your thoughts on the key technologies that one should use for building your personal brand?
Personally, I rely a lot on LinkedIn. It's a key technology in building my professional brand, especially. I wish I could have a blog. I think that would be amazing. And it doesn't necessarily have to relate to my work, but it relates to my passions. And so a lot of people do have those platforms that they use to build their personal brands and have the right following on those platforms to get their message across. It's an ambition of mine. I also use Twitter a lot to either express my thoughts or to actually... It's also very nice to understand what the market is saying and what audiences are saying and what consumers are saying about particular issues around the world. So those are the platforms that I rely on mainly. Personal platforms would be Instagram, where I'm very protective of my personal life. So, it's locked platforms, but yes, it's where I express my personal life especially to record for my kids to see in the future.
Now, talking about the future, as we move into a future that's more and more digital, as we move into a future that has artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, what does the future of personal branding hold in your view?
Personal branding is no longer limited to people who follow the vocation of marketing and communications, that's for sure. And the future of personal branding, as much as we have all these reels and reams of content go out on a daily basis, I do believe that audiences and people will become more discerning in choosing the type of content they want to have access to. We know the power of data, and we know the power of the technology that actually manages the kind of content that we have access to based on our interest. However, I think in the future, we will really be the curators of all our content. We will be our own program schedulers in terms of what I view, when I view it, how I view it, what ad I'm exposed to. That's what technology forces us to be, our own broadcasters or our own channels. And so it's for everyone to use wisely or unwisely. It's up to you. But if you're conscious in building your brand, I think the consciousness will be clear. It'll be very easy to actually manage in the future. It'll be much easier than it is now.
Now, let's talk about brand leadership in business. And can you tell us a little bit more about the biggest success stories? We spoke about Mzansi for sure, but maybe more current, maybe at Wunderman. What have been the biggest success stories where you have helped your clients establish brand leadership?
I think I'm still working towards that. My Mzansi for sure story is definitely there on career highlights. I do take pride in contributing to the marketing industry through my time and my skills, and I'm a committee member of the Advertising and Media Association of South Africa. That's a grand platform that we use to educate young professionals in the marketing and in the advertising and marketing industry. But we also use that platform for media professionals to come and engage, and we have forums, monthly forums, where we discuss key topics that relate to the industry. I take pride in the work that I do for that. We have fundraisers. So, in marketing and comms, we have fun, but we also make a difference, create legacy projects that are going to build the industry, and we make sure that the industry is always abreast of the latest trends. So that's work that I've been doing since 2014, and I love it. Because I don't get paid for it, but I do it, and I know the impact that it's going to have long term.
Now, talking about the future of branding, it's probably the one industry. Now, talking about the future of branding, it's probably the one industry that is the most affected by digital, by technology. So when you speak to clients, what do you advise them to look out for when building the brand of the future?
Well, at this stage, I think we advise our client, the services that we offer, clients pay us for that advice. And we're at the point where we want to create forums for clients to have access to the best information globally, what's happening on a global scale, involving clients in conferences that are happening globally, and having them see the work that has been done by global brands. Some of our clients, even though they're South African brands, they actually do have a global outlook. And, the advice varies based on the needs of the clients. We at Wunderman also have a training academy on digital platforms, because a lot of the marketers that we do work with, use digital platforms or social media platforms on a personal basis, but haven't quite integrated them into the rest of the business from a return on investment perspective. So being able to provide the necessary training for our clients is key in upskilling in digital marketing, but also giving them access to best practice case studies. And that's the beauty of being a part of a global network, because then you have access to what's happening in Brazil and what's happening in Russia, what's happening in New York. And that is our value proposition to clients, and that's what sets us apart from our competition.
So the brand of the future obviously is a global brand. The brand of the future is driven by technology, by digital, by data. So maybe we can talk about that next time. For now, how should listeners get hold of you? How should they connect with you? On what platform would you prefer our listeners to connect with you and to follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I am Mohlele. I am MOHLEHLE. And on LinkedIn, I'm Mpho Maseko. That's where listeners can get a hold of me.
Okay. And now, last but not least, what is the one thing that you would really like to ask your listeners to take away from the show and implement in their career?
You know, the journey to personal brand building is a mission to living your best life. And it becomes so beautiful when you're actually able to project that best life externally. But what's important is being able to create the balance of who you are inside and what you stand for, and how you project that is externally is what makes it beautiful. So like many great personal brands, one thing that I have noticed is as people build their personal brands, as they are establishing them, they're very unconscious of it, but they do it and have fun. So people must have fun in this journey of living your best life.
Well, thank you so much, Mpho. You truly are an inspiration. You live your brand, and I've known you now for, I think, 3-4 years. These lessons are really, really important for young professionals. I wish you all the best in your future success. And thanks again for sharing your insights into the future of branding.